As you know, today we are discussing the League of Nations. And as you know, our today's discussion is based on a book. Its title is International Organization in World Politics. It is authored by three scholars, David Armstrong, Lorna Lloyd, and John Redmond. And its first part is the League idea and the role of Woodrow Wilson. The League idea and the role of Woodrow Wilson. So the authors start the discussion with saying, for a long time, many people had imagined replacing the constant disorder in world politics with a system that could keep peace, safety, and order. So you understand it well that international level, there's no order, there's no government, there's no solid international law. So there is a sort of disorder. That is why wars break up every other day somewhere, on this front, on that front, in this region, in that region, wars. And there are many other international problems as well. This is because there's no world authority, there's no world government, and there's not a stable order. So many people are concerned with this issue. This idea was not new in the 20th century, but the huge destruction of the First World War made it something that could no longer be ignored. There was the First World War, it caused huge destruction, and now after the war, people were more concerned about the international order, international peace. Leaders and thinkers now had to act seriously on these ideas. People everywhere were demanding a new way to stop international violence. People everywhere were demanding a new way, new method, new mechanism to stop this international violence, international wars. Elected politicians could not ignore the public mood. So the public, they were also tired of wars. They were also tired of disorder. So publics, people all over the world, they wanted order, they wanted peace, international peace. The old world order had collapsed. Old world order had collapsed due to the First World War. The only group offering a complete alternative were Lenin's Bolsheviks. Lenin's Bolsheviks, who wanted to overturn existing social and economic systems. Anybody knows Lenin's Bolsheviks? Who was Lenin? Lenin. 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 Lenin and Stalin, they were Soviet leaders, Soviet presidents of Soviet Union. So Lenin was a president of the Soviet Union. And who were Bolsheviks? Bolsheviks, they were his party. They were communists. They were communists. They staged a communist revolution in Soviet Union in 1917 or 19, and they took power in Soviet Union, in Russia and Soviet Union. And now they have their ideology, communist ideology for the whole of world. And many people in other countries, they were inspired by communists. They launched their own movements and parties. Even in Pakistan, there is a Communist Party of Pakistan. Do you know this? Anybody knows? There is a Communist Party of Pakistan as well. No. No. People's Party is not a communist party. It is a democratic party. People's Party is a democratic party. It believes in socialism, not in communism. So Islamic socialism. Communist Party of Pakistan is a separate party. It is not very well known, but it is there. last 1 or 2 weeks back, they had they held an event, and the event was held in the honor of a communist president of Afghanistan, Najibullah. Najibullah was a communist president of Pakistan, against whom the Afghan Mujahideen fought a war, against whom Pakistan and America fought a war, those communists. And Communist Party of Pakistan, in honor of that communist Afghan leader, has recently held an event in Peshawar. So there are very few. Now there are very few communists in Pakistan. Very few. There is also a party in India, Communist Party of India, CPI. CPI. So there were communist parties, socialist parties all over the world. They were inspired by the Soviet Union, the communist revolution in Soviet Union. So their leaders were Lenin and Stalin, very famous. So no, that communist ideology, it was a revolutionary ideology. It challenged and it threatened democratic governments and capitalist governments, democratic orders and capitalist order. Communist ideology is against capitalist ideology. Communists say capitalism should be eliminated from the world. And Karl Marx, who is founder of the modern communism, he said capitalism will die its own death. One day, capitalism will die its own death. So there are many details about it, but we have to move forward. So it was a challenge to the non-communist world, the communist ideology, the communist inspiration, which the workers had in all over the world in different countries. The only group offering a complete alternative were Lenin's Bolsheviks, who wanted to overturn existing social and economic systems. They wanted to change, they wanted to overthrow the existing governments, existing systems. The Western powers gathered in Paris understood this situation clearly. The Western powers, America, France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Spain, these Western powers, they gathered in Paris, and they understood this threat, communist threat. Their first big task was to turn many confusing ideas about the League into a clear and practical plan. They also wanted to show that the League could be a good reformist answer instead of a revolutionary one like the Bolsheviks offered. During the war, many private groups of concerned people, such as the American League to Enforce Peace, shared their own ideas for a new world system. These efforts helped make the public think about a new order and made the term League of Nations, well known. So this term became well known. But the actual league that was created did not come directly from these plans. British officials who prepared a draft plan for a league accepted some of the general ideas from these groups, but rejected many of their details as impractical. So there were many proposals from different parts of the world, from private people, from private organizations as well. So some of the proposals were accepted when the League of Nations was being created. Some other proposal was rejected. They were considered as impractical. They were not practical. President Woodrow Wilson. Do you know Woodrow Wilson? Yes, American. He was the American president. Woodrow Wilson. He was an idealist. Idealist. He is famous. He is well famous for his idealism, and there is a term used: Wilsonian idealism. Wilsonian idealism. So at that time, Woodrow Wilson was a president of America. He is often called the father of the league, father of the league, League of Nations. He refused to join any unofficial plans. Unofficial, official plans which were presented by governments, governments of different countries. They were official plans. Unofficial plans which were presented or proposed by non-governmental entities, NGOs or individuals. He even called members of such groups wool gatherers. Wool gatherers. You know wool? What is wool? Wool. What is its Urdu name? Wool. 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 Nobody knows its Urdu name? Wool. Wool. Eh? Yes, yes. Urdu name. What's its Urdu name? Eh? Oon. Its Urdu name is oon. Okay? Woolen clothes, uni kapde. Woolen clothes. Wool gatherers. So Woodrow Wilson called members of such groups wool gatherers, meaning dreamers. Dreamers. Okay, who dream with no sense of reality. Who dream with no sense of reality. Wilson's part in creating the League was complicated. Wilson's role in creating the League of Nations was complex. It was not a simple role. Wilson believed from an early stage that a new international system was needed. A new international system was needed. Wilson believed it. He saw it as a way to bring fame to himself. So, first of all, he thought if he succeeds in implementing a new order in the world, he will become famous. People all over the world say, look, Woodrow Wilson has done this. So I will become famous. It will bring fame to me and power, and I will become powerful. And respect to the United States. And it will also bring respect, honor to the United States, because the United States will have established the League of Nations, a new world order. Later, the other world leaders, he attached many other goals to the League. Like other world leaders, Wilson attached many other goals to the League. He wanted it to help stop the Bolshevik threat. He also wanted the League of Nations to counter the communist threat, support peace treaties, spread democracy, and build a new economic order led by the United States. So in Wilson's view, in Wilson's thought, these were the purposes, the objectives of creating the what? League of Nations, creating the League of Nations. He also hoped it would help to end colonial rule. Wilson also hoped that the League of Nations will help to end colonial rule. However, he had no clear idea about what kind of organization could truly make such a big diplomatic change. So he did not know what kind of structures will be needed, how many organizations, sub-organizations will be required under the League of Nations. So at the beginning, he had no clear idea. Even before the war, Wilson showed interest in new ways to maintain peace. Even before the First World War, he showed interest in new ways to maintain peace. His first Secretary of State, William Jennings his Secretary of State, first Secretary of State. These treaties said that if a dispute appeared, both sides would wait for 1 year before going to war. There were several treaties which were prepared by the State Department of the United States. And these treaties mention that if any dispute arises among two states or more states, they will wait for how much time? They will wait for how much time? 1 year. You come here. They will wait for 1 year before going to war. Before going to war, they will wait. It is called cool off time. It is called cool off time. This 1 year cooling off period would allow time for investigation and attempts to settle peacefully. This cooling off time, this period would allow time for investigation. There is a dispute, but there is no war has started yet. So there can be some time, 1 year time to investigate what is the nature of the problem, what is the nature of the dispute, and attempts to settle peacefully. And the world community, the international community, the other countries, they can make efforts to settle the dispute peacefully so that no war starts. The hope was that tempers would cool and fighting could be avoided. This was the hope, that when 1 year will have passed, the tempers will have cooled, the anger will have cooled, and fighting could be avoided. War could be avoided. This same idea later reappeared as Article 12 in the League Covenant. League Covenant means the Charter of the League. The Charter of the League, the Treaty of the League Agreement. Another early influence was an attempt by Wilson and his advisor, Colonel House, to create a Pan-American treaty. It included a promise by all members to respect and protect each other's territories and political independence under Republican governments. That attempt included a promise by all members to respect and protect each other's territories and political independence under Republican governments. Wilson used similar words in his first public speech supporting the League in 1916. When Wilson made first speech for the purpose of creating the League of Nations, he used similar words. And that speech was made when? 1916. He used similar words again in his 14 points in 1918. 2 years later, he made another speech and used the same words. No, he presented his 14 points. His 14 points are very famous, just like Qaid-e-Azam's 14 points, you know. His 14 points are before our 14 points. Wilson presented his 14 points in 1918. Anybody knows when Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah presented his 14 points? Roughly like that. So, however, before giving his 1916 speech, Wilson removed any mention of using military force against rule breakers. Rule breakers who start war. They are the rule breakers who start war violating the Charter of the League of Nations. So there was an argument. How should the international community react? Whether the international community start a war against the aggressor, against the state which has started war, or it should do something else. So it was a difficult thing to undertake. Very difficult thing. Because if you decide that you will fight against every aggressor, then your country will probably will be engaged in war forever. Because every time, any time, a war is going on somewhere. So the Americans were apprehensive. They were hesitant that they should not undertake this promise. They should not say that whenever there is a war, they will fight against the aggressor. He understood that the American public would not accept an open promise to use their army in every international case. Wilson's challenge was to turn his fine speeches into real and workable commitments. It was his challenge. He rejected early British ideas that gave main power only to great nations. Great Britain proposed that the real power should be in the hands of the great powers. Woodrow Wilson did not agree with the British proposal. He also turned down Colonel House's first draft of 1918, which left out smaller countries. Which left out smaller countries. Colonel House proposed that smaller countries should not have much power or the membership in the League of Nations or in the Security Council. Still, Wilson kept saying that the League must be strong and energetic. The League of Nations should be strong and energetic. Sometimes he said peace would come through open discussion and public pressure. Peace, international peace, it would come through public pressure and open discussion. At other times, he said mutual promises of protection were the League's backbone. You know, backbone on which something depends. So these are the mutual promises of protection. In other words, collective security. Collective security is a huge promise. It's a huge promise. The mutual promises were later written in as Article 10. Article 10. He even told the United States Senate that Article 10 was only a moral duty, not a legal one. Article 10 is not a legal duty, it is a moral duty. Moral duty means it's up to you. Either you fulfill it or not. It is a moral duty. If it's a legal duty, then you are bound. Then, in any case, you have to fulfill this duty. Just before the peace conference, he privately said that economic punishments would be the main tool against aggressors, not direct force. If any country invades another country, attacks another country, so the international community will punish the attacker, punish the aggressor economically by putting sanctions against it. But the international community will not fight against it, against the aggressor. The international community will not fight against the aggressor. Wilson was also unsure how the League should handle colonies of former enemy countries. He was also unsure how the League of Nations should handle colonies. You know, colonies, have you studied colonialism? Colonies of former enemy countries. Who were the former enemy countries in after the First World War? Enemy countries of America. Okay, Germany. Then France. Italy, yes, I think. And the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire, it was also their enemy. Huh? Austria? Okay, okay, fine. In December 1918, Wilson said that these colonies could become common property of the League and be managed by smaller nations. Smaller nations can manage the colonies, but they will be property of they will be under the League of Nations. But when General Smuts of South Africa, General Smuts was from South Africa, when he published his detailed plan, Wilson liked his idea of a system of mandates. System of mandates. There are mandates in the there were mandates in the League of Nations, and I think there are still mandates under the United Nations. Anybody knows? Okay, we will study it later. Smuts did not want to include former German colonies in Africa and the Pacific, calling them barbarian lands. Wilson disagreed. General Smuts of South Africa said some of the colonies they were barbarian, so they should not be included in the mandates of the League of Nations. Woodrow Wilson did not agree. He rejected. He said they too, the barbarians too, should be part of the League's mandate system. In other words, all colonies should be part of the League's mandate system. By the time of the peace conference was held in Paris. The issue of mandates had become very important to Wilson. He told other world leaders that the League would be a joke if it did not have this duty of trusteeship. He told the world that if the League of Nations cannot manage the colonies, cannot manage the mandates, that the League will become a joke. Another difficulty was that Wilson had lost trust in his own State Department, and especially his Secretary of State, Robert Lansing. He did not trust them. Wilson thought Lansing was too cautious and too focused on legal points. He was a bureaucrat, basically. He might be a bureaucrat. But whatever, in Wilson's view, he was more focused on legal problems, legal issues. They disagreed on the League's purpose. So Woodrow Wilson and his Secretary of State, they disagreed on the purpose of the League of Nations. Lansing said the main task was to spread democracy in non-democratic countries. So some people believe, they argue, that democratic countries fight less. They do not attack each other. So if all the countries in the world, they become democratic, so it will bring international peace. No more there will be wars. So Lansing, Wilson's Secretary of State, he argued that the purpose of the League of Nations should be to promote democracy in non-democratic countries. Wilson believed all League members should promise to act against aggressors. Lansing thought countries should simply agree not to use violence in their disputes. These are two things. Lansing said that if all countries agree and they promise that they will not start war, then there will be international peace. There will be no war. Wilson said no. All countries should agree that if a war starts, all others will fight against the aggressor. This was the disagreement between the American president and his Secretary of State. As the conflict between them increased, Wilson refused to read any more League reports from his State Department. So when the disagreement increased, Wilson started considering the reports and proposals made by the State Department, which was under Lansing. At the start of 1919, Wilson had very few documents to work from. He only had a short draft of the League written by Colonel House in July 1918 and a brief revision by himself. House's version was full of emotional phrases about honorable and dishonorable behavior between nations. Wilson avoided that tone. He did not like this tone, but his own writing was still unclear and vague. Vague also means unclear. British officials had thought far more carefully about the details and had several drafts ready by 1919. British officials, they prepared drafts. The most detailed was by General Smuts. General Smuts was from South Africa. His draft was most detailed. France and Italy also prepared their own versions, uh, covenants or constitutions for the League of Nations. All these countries, they prepared their own constitutions, their own covenants for the creation of the League of Nations. The final League covenant was the result of long negotiations among all these drafts. So all these drafts were prepared, and then there were negotiations among these drafters, the countries, and then a final draft was agreed upon. Wilson's main contribution was to insist firmly that a League of Nations must definitely be created. So it was the first point agreed upon. Wilson emphasized that a League of Nations must be created. Number two, it must be the first item discussed at the Paris Peace Conference. When the peace conference in Paris will be held, it should be the first point of discussion that a League of Nations will be created. Third, it must be included as a key part of the peace treaty itself. Peace treaty. Okay, ji. Let's stop here. Next class, we will start with the next point, the covenant of the League of Nations. So it should be enough for today.